Army of Darkness is a 1992 horror comedy directed by Sam Raimi and written by Sam Raimi and Ivan Raimi, starring Bruce Campbell as a sardonic hardware store clerk is accidentally transported to 1300 AD, where he must retrieve the Necronomicon and battle an army of the dead so he can return home. Scream Factory presents this film for the first time with a new 4K restoration with Dolby Vision and HDR10. What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. I am Kenneth. Today, guys, we are going to be taking a look at Army of Darkness on 4K. The latest release from Scream Factory just came out this week, and I am so excited to get into this one and break it all down for you. There is so much to talk about with this release. There's 4 discs. Look at that thick 4K case right there, and multiple cuts, Blu-rays, 4Ks, controversy because some cuts didn't get 4Ks, and we've just got tons to talk about here today. But before I get into it, I want to ask, if you are into physical media, if you like 4Ks and Blu-rays and owning the movies that you love, you came to the right place. Hit the subscribe button. We talk about physical media every single day on this channel. Also, be sure to like this video, guys. Liking videos is very important. And then comment down below what's your thoughts on Army of Darkness. Your favorite Sam Raimi movie? Is it your favorite Evil Dead movie? There's definitely a lot of people that would say this is their favorite. Let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know if you plan on purchasing this based on my recommendation. There is a slipcover 4K option. There's also a steelbook. I will link both down in the description below. Let's get into talking about Army of Darkness. So I do like to talk about the movie, then we'll talk about the visuals and the audio and the special features and the packaging and all that good stuff. Like I said, there's a lot to get into with this set, multiple cuts and just so much stuff, but I do like to talk about the movie. So I did watch the theatrical cut of this movie, and to be honest, that's the version I've been watching most of my life. I saw this movie for the first time at the drive-in when I was probably like 7 or 8. This was actually my first Evil Dead movie because I did not watch the first 2 before I saw this. It was a triple feature. I saw Aladdin, A League of Their Own, and Army of Darkness in the drive-in. I will always remember that triple feature at the drive-in. And I just remember as a kid, like, this movie used to scare the crap out of me. And I remember watching it on VHS and Laserdisc. My aunt was a big fan of it. So whenever I went over to her house, we would watch it. And again, I loved the movie, but it also scared the crap out of me. I didn't pick up on some of the goofier, lighter tones of this film until I got a little bit older. So growing up, this was the one that I watched. I didn't watch the Evil Dead movies until later on in my life. Probably my early 20s is when I finally ended up watching those. So the theatrical cut is the only version in this set that is in 4K. So that's the one that I watched. But yeah, this is really rewatching this. And after I watched the original Evil Dead movies and the most recent remake, like, those kind of became my favorite. And then I always saw Army of Darkness as lesser than. So again, even though I grew up with this movie, it's very goofy, it's very slapstick, it just became my least favorite. Not to say that I don't really enjoy the movie, but it just became my least favorite. So how do I feel about it now? It's been a few years since I've seen it. I probably last watched it on DVD, to be honest, because I have a DVD copy. I think I have that Screwhead edition or whatever. I found it at Walmart. But this rewatching, I will say, in 4K, I really enjoyed this movie, and again, it moved up again on my list, but I don't know, there's just something about this movie. It is very goofy, it's very slapstick, it's almost like an episode of Looney Tunes in some portions of the movie, but it's also like extremely epic in other parts of the movie. Like, there's just so much going on in this film. It's really how I would describe it. It's a medieval war movie set in the Evil Dead universe. Like, you have Bruce Campbell, he's like a legitimate, like, wartime action hero in this movie. And he definitely had that arc from Evil Dead 1 and Evil Dead 2, kind of becoming more of that action hero type. But in this one, he just really comes into his own as the character of Ash. So this one, though, really leans into a lot of the camp and a lot of the goofier elements of this franchise. Like, it's always had a little bit of a goofier, campier tone to it. But this one just goes full on into it. The whole sequence where Bruce is looking for the Necronomicon and trying to find it and everything, and just all the stuff that he goes through. I'm gonna try not to spoil some of the sequences, but it gets very goofy, very Looney Tunes, like I said. Like, it's Three Stooges. Like, even Skeleton's doing like the eye poke to him. It's very silly. It's just very silly. It's fun. It's fun as hell. Like, I enjoy it. But it's very silly in those moments. So it very much leans into that. So just letting you know, this is not, again, it's billed as a horror movie for sure, but there's very little horror in this movie. I mean, except for like just the imagery, like the costumes and the deadites themselves are kind of horror. And like there's some blood and guts and stuff in the movie as well. But the tone of the movie is action, comedy, a little bit of romance. Like this movie's really got everything in it for everybody, which I guess is why so many people love it, because it really is kind of the ultimate movie in that respect. One thing I really love about this movie though is I really feel like Bruce Campbell comes into his own as the character of Ash with such confidence and charisma. Like the way that he plays the role in this movie, it's almost like he's definitely channeling a little Eastwood in his performance and some of the one-liners that he spouts off. But this has so many one-liners from Ash in this movie. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, give me some sugar, baby. Groovy when he gets that robotic hand on. This is my boomstick. So many iconic lines from Bruce Campbell as Ash in this movie. Hail to the king, baby. And that's like scratching the surface of just some of the great one-liners that Bruce Campbell has as this character. So I definitely love him in this movie. I think that it is probably the best portrayal of the character by Bruce Campbell. And yeah, it's really hard not to love him in this movie. He's just so lovable. He is a badass. He's like an action hero, but he's also a little bit of a buffoon. It's easy to love him, but it's also easy to be like, oh, you're an idiot as well. But that just the way that he plays it, like he can just balance him so well. He can be badass while at the same time kind of being a little bit of an idiot when it comes to some things. But yeah, and also suave as hell, the way, you know, he talks to some of the women and stuff in this movie. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Bruce Campbell is awesome in this movie. Definitely a highlight. Another thing I really love about this movie is Raimi's direction. Like, it is top notch. Like, he really comes into his own with like his filmmaking style here, with just some of the very inventive camera movements, especially in some of those like hand-to-hand combat scenes. Like when that first scene with the witch, like when she turns around, they're in the castle and they like have an all-out fight. She's like smacking people around. Just the sound effects, and also we'll get into when we talk about the sound, but she's like smacking people. Just the way that he shoots the action, the hand-to-hand combat, and just all the different quick cuts and everything. It's just so like Sam Raimi. And I just love it. Like, that's what he's known for. And you'll see some of that in his later films. Like when he does the Spider-Man films, like you'll see that kind of direction style, and it all comes from these movies. So great direction by Sam Raimi. I just love what he does with all these movies. I feel like I really enjoy this movie and appreciate it a lot more than I did before I went into it. And I've gone through such an arc with this movie. Again, I saw it when I was a kid. I grew up really enjoying it, and I remember it scaring me. And then when I was like a teen, early 20s, I was like, this isn't as good. It's a little too silly for me. And now I really love it again. So I don't know, it's come full circle for me, I guess. And maybe it had to do with the 4K, which we'll get into here in a second. But man, it's really a fun movie. It's a great movie. So I really love it. I will give it a 4 out of a 5. Also, the score, the music in this movie is also super awesome as well. So let's get into the visuals of this movie, the reason you guys are all here. So this is a native 4K restoration supervised by Sam Raimi himself and the cinematographer Bill Pope and editor Bob Murawski. Am I pronouncing that right? But anyway, so this was announced to come out on 4K, I believe, all the way back in 2020, or it was announced that they were working on it back in 2020. And I think the reason that it took so long, I don't know if this was ever confirmed, but I feel like there was a tweet or something that was made somewhere. But anyway, Sam Raimi was, of course, working on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So the reason that this was delayed for so long is because he had to finish making that movie before he could come back and supervise the restoration process here. But I'm so glad that they waited for him and the cinematographer and the editor, because I feel like having them really made for such a beautiful restoration. And for those of y'all that don't know, I actually just got a new TV, and this is my first watch on my new OLED C2 from LG. And damn, did this film shine on it. Like, what a perfect first experience on my new TV was Army of Darkness on 4K. It just looked beautiful. The medieval setting really looked glorious, with plenty of outdoor. Like, I knew this movie was going to look good because of the outdoor setting, like in comparison to The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, which are like confined to the cabin. Just not as many opportunities to shine in that setting, I think. Again, it's not that the film's fault. And again, Evil Dead, the remake as well, didn't have as many opportunities to shine either. This one does, because you have those sprawling locations that just pop in the HDR. You know, all the sandy desert locations, the castle walls, like the stone on the castles, like it really highlighted some of the incredible set design work here, because it looked amazing. Like you could just tell the detail that went into prepping some of these stages with some of those castle walls in 4K, and it just really highlights how much they paid attention to capturing that realistic look from back in the day. And it looked incredible. That stone, just like deep grays and blacks, and it just looked so like rigid and real. The medieval costumes as well looked amazing. Like there's lots of like reds and golds on the costumes. Like even the actual like armor itself just looked amazing. Like all of it just shined and stuff and glistened in that sunlight, and it just popped in all the best ways. So yeah, I cannot say enough good things about this transfer. The black levels are excellent. They add a layer of depth just never before seeing this movie, and that's one of the reasons why I love watching 4K, because when you add in that HDR and those black levels, it gives the film such a rich depth. And you can just feel the weight of everything, just the weight of the armor sitting on these soldiers' shoulders, and it just looks incredible. So very little grain here. The picture is just sharp and clear throughout. And again, I cannot say enough good things. Facial detail, like everything. Some of the close-ups on Bruce Campbell's face, like when he has like the actual like ash and dirt all over it, it just looks amazing. Like the skin tones and just the dirt laying on his skin. It just, oh my goodness. I can't say enough great things about this transfer. It really is one of the best Screen Factory 4K transfers that I've seen. And also just, feel like I keep saying this a lot lately. There's just been a lot of really good transfers, but definitely one of the best transfers of the year that was made a lot better by my first time watch on my OLED TV. So I'm happy to have that now and actually be able to, I feel like, more adequately review these 4K releases for you all. So let's get into the audio. I also got a new sound bar as well with a subwoofer. So I did listen to this in 5.1 DTS Master Audio, and it sounded phenomenal. Like I cannot say, again, this is my first time, but some of you all are probably like, yeah, Kim, we know about the sound and stuff. It sounds great with the subwoofer and the bass, but this is my first time getting to experience that, really, at least in my home theater setting. And man, so what a phenomenal difference that made. The sound, again, there was plenty of opportunities to shine here for this movie. The first time I noticed it was when Ash first fired off that shotgun blast, that first shotgun blast, and then holds the gun up in the air and says, "This is my boomstick." Like that first shotgun blast with the bass through the subwoofer just vibrated and reverberated through my entire room. I just felt that, like, and I had the sound like all the way up because I was trying to test this stuff. So I could just feel it in my chest, the reverberations and the vibrations from the bass. And it just, I don't know, it felt so satisfying. And this is, like I said, a war movie. Like when you get to the end, that big Deadite battle outside the castle, like there's explosions, there's cars racing in, armored cars. It gets crazy. Some of the horses, I mean, the horses galloping and stuff, like you could feel that through the bass and the subwoofer, and it all just sounded incredible. Let's go ahead and get into the packaging of this. And again, this is a 4-disc set, and right here you have this nice slip cover. And I'll kind of zoom in on the special features and all that stuff on the back, even though we'll get into that here in a second. Assuming this is the original poster, because Screen Factory usually does that with their new 4Ks, but just taking it out of the slip cover, you can look right there. Now, what I will say is right here, guys, and again, I ordered this through Amazon, but this is probably something that happened at Screen Factory, but you can see right there, I've got some damage there at the bottom. And the main reason for that is because this is such a thick 4K case, this barely really fits in this slipcover. You have to put it in just the right way and just kind of pop it open in just the right way. So really be careful when you're, you know, putting your slipcover in this 4K case, because I think they could have made this slip just a little bit bigger to make it fit a little bit better for the thicker case. But you know, it's okay. Again, I might have to end up returning this to get a case that doesn't have the damage on it, because that's probably going to get on my nerves. And also, we have to go into this, but there's no reversible cover arts on there, and again, that's disappointing. We've talked about this on several Screen Factory releases. They do reversible cover art for a couple, and then they don't. It's like there's no consistency there. I wish Screen Factory would be a little bit more consistent in their approach there. But then you look on all of these discs, and they all have individual disc art for all of them. So very cool stuff there. Now let's get into the special features. And like I said, we're going to talk about all the cuts here. So you do have the theatrical cut on 4K, and you also have the theatrical cut on Blu-ray with a 4K scan. You have the director's cut with just a standard Blu-ray, no Blu-ray with a 4K scan. And again, we'll get into that here in a second. And with the international cut, you do have a Blu-ray with the 4K scan. Now, the thing I want to note about this is it was not advertised that the international cut was going to get a 4K scan on the Blu-ray, but when you look on the back of this release right here, it says 4K scan from the inner positive. And I actually, watched all of the discs, put them all in. I didn't watch them all in their entirety, but I put all the discs in to test them. And yes, the international cut is a 4K scan on the Blu-ray. Then you also get the television cut on the international cut disc, and that is in standard definition, which is, just DVD quality. So not the best quality for the television cut, but let's go ahead and get into just all of the cuts on this release. So you have the theatrical cut, which is about 82 minutes long. And again, that's kind of my preferred way to watch this movie because I always just like watching movies the way they were originally intended. I've just always been that way. But I know there's a lot of fans of the director's cut, and there's a substantial difference between the theatrical cut and the director's cut. The director's cut adds about 15 minutes of extra footage. Like there's a couple of significant moments, like the scene where him and Sheila are making love. That's not in the theatrical cut. That's only in the director's cut, just them. It's a real quick scene. It's like 35, 40 seconds, but it's significant because it's a whole scene and it's not in theatrical cut. A lot of the other stuff is just like 3-4 seconds, just extended scenes here and there. There's a scene with him when he grows the two heads, like they're arguing. I think there's a little bit more banter between the two of them that's added, but there's a lot of extra stuff that's added in the middle of this. The big thing though is the ending. So they take out the S-Mart ending, which I actually love. I love the S-Mart ending, so I don't like it removed, but they add in the new ending, which is basically the dream sequence with Ash, where he finds out that everything's been destroyed and there's like the city, there's like Big Ben laying there. Everything's been destroyed and it's basically like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. So that's the ending of the director's cut. So I went back and I didn't watch the entire director's cut. And to be honest, I don't know if I've seen the director's cut in its entirety, but there's a lot of differences. I did watch some of those scenes that were different, and there were cool scenes, definitely cool to have in the set, but I don't know. Would it have been nice to have the director's cut in 4K? Now, they said that the reason that they didn't was because they could not get all the film elements to properly restore the director's cut in 4K, which I completely understand. But also, the international cut does include some of the director's cut material. I think it does include the lovemaking scene between him and Sheila, and there's a couple other things it includes as well. And it also takes out the dream sequence ending and adds in the S-Mart ending. So I think the international cut would probably be my preferred way to view it. I wish they would have done that in 4K, which again, just you kind of wonder, like, you did the Blu-ray with a 4K scan of the international cut. Why didn't you just go ahead and do it in 4K? Again, I know it would have maybe been a little bit more expensive, but I mean, it would have added a lot to this release, I think, if you would have at least done that international cut in 4K. Also, if you have some of those director's cut scenes in 4K, if you've already scanned them in 4K, why couldn't you have just included those in the director's cut, did a proper 4K of the director's cut, and just the scenes that you couldn't do, you would just say, we couldn't do these, so there's going to be a little dip in quality here and there. Maybe put a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie, and just kind of explain to everybody, look, we tried to do this director's cut in 4K. We gave you the 4K, but there's going to be a couple of scenes and sequences that dip in quality. But maybe it was just too many because there's a lot of differences, a lot of little 3-second, 4-second. So maybe they just didn't think it was going to look right, and there'd be a lot of like flickering back and forth of like, lower quality to higher quality. They just didn't want to mess with it. They just thought it wouldn't look good. So I don't know. Again, it's controversial. A lot of people really wanted that proper 4K restoration of the director's cut. It was kind of the selling point for this release for them. And a lot of people chose not to buy this based on that not being in there. Now, me personally, like I said, I only own a DVD copy of this. I did not buy that previous Shout Factory, Scream Factory release of Army of Darkness back in 2015. So I was fine with this. Again, I got all of these for the first time in Blu-ray, all of these different cuts, and it's cool that they included all of them in here. And then they just didn't put the theatrical cut in 4K in here, and that was it. They included them all in here. They're all in here, but the director's cut, again, is just a standard Blu-ray. I watched some of that it really doesn't look great, especially when you're comparing it to the 4K, the theatrical, and even the Blu-ray with the 4K scan. It just really did not look great, that director's cut, and so, especially in some of those scenes that they couldn't fully restore. Like some of those really looked bad, with just some heavy grain and also just like black tears that just kept popping and through all of them. It really did not look good. Now the TV cut adds in some of the deleted scenes, but it also takes out a lot of the, you know, of course, blood and language and all that stuff. So I can't imagine that would be your preferred way to view the movie, but if you're interested in all the deleted scenes and stuff that they added to make it flow better with commercials, I imagine you might want to check out that TV cut. It is cool that they included it in there. And everything else you get in here, again, there's tons of commentaries, tons of features, tons of deleted scenes, interviews, and all that stuff, but it's all ported over from the previous 2015 Scream release. So, but it is cool that they, you know, included them all again. Of course, it would be awesome if they added something in new. You still got Sam Raimi, you still got Bruce Campbell. If they were supervising the transfer, they could at least shot like a 5-minute, 10-minute something, little special feature on the movie. Again, it is the 30th anniversary of the film. You would think they want to come back and do something a little bit extra for it. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, I don't have a problem with the fact that they didn't do the director's cut in 4K. I think that's the thing that most people were kind of complaining about. I understand though, if you already bought the 2015 version, you were hoping for some kind of upgrade to the director's cut and you didn't get it, I understand that you're upset. But if you want to see this movie, the theatrical cut in 4K, it is by far the best it's ever looked. There's no way that that 2015 Blu-ray looks anywhere close to what this 4K looks like. So for me, that's worth it alone. And it's just a bonus that we get all of these other cuts. Doesn't really matter to me what form that they're in. It's just cool that they're actually in there so I can watch them if I want to. But again, this is an amazing set, and 4 discs in this set, $27.99 currently on Amazon. And I think it's like $36.99 on the Scream Factory Shout Factory website. It's around the same price as the Evil Dead 2013 4K was, and you only got 1 disc with that, and you get this big set with 4 discs in it for the exact same price. Scream Factory's pricing is just all over the place, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. I guess, guys, look, at the end of the day, I recommend this. I highly recommend this. I thought it looked great on 4K, so I highly recommend it. The movie's really fun. If you haven't seen Army of Darkness, I definitely recommend that you pick up this 4K and watch it. You will not be disappointed. So guys, that is my review of Army of Darkness on 4K from Scream Factory. I appreciate you guys watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment down below your thoughts, turn on the bell notifications, and follow me on all my social media accounts. Those links are down below in the description, and we'll see you next time.